I could still hear them fighting and shouting behind me. I was going to yell too, something like, "We are now completely doomed and it's totally all your fault." But when I turned to face them, they were all looking at me. Like I would know something. Like I would know what to do. Like I was their dad. Like the end would never come as long as I was there. "Is there a message?" said Samson too. "Yes, what does it say?" I could have told him the message is permanent fatal errors, so we're dead, and by the way, I'm not a dad, I'm a kid, so stop looking at me like that. These children, Hassan, Samson too, and Max, their dads weren't looking out for them at all. Their dads made them do all this stuff to make them cleverer or richer or more successful, and then they'd be packed off to doom in space. But still, they thought someone, somewhere, would be looking out for them. In the circumstance, it felt like that should be me. I thought, okay, you lot are my mission. I'm engaged. I turned off the monitor and said, "Everything's going to be okay. We just need to find Earth and then we'll go back home." Florida hadn't noticed till then. Now she screamed, "Oh my God, the Earth is gone. What have you done with the Earth, you idiot?" "It hasn't gone, it's just not very visible at the moment. Don't worry, I'll turn up. It'll turn up." "How do you know?" said something too. "What if it doesn't?" "Because all Florida stuff is there. The Playmobil Viking ship, the slightly leaky Super Soaker, the It's Your Solar System glow-in-the-dark mobile." I don't know what made me start listing stuff, but it worked. It reminded them about Earth and how real and big it was. It made them see in their heads and they started adding things to the list until they calmed down and finally went to sleep. The bright blue sleeping bags are attached to the wall, hanging there with their heads lolling. The children look like they are sleeping in a row of Christmas stockings and I'm the only one awake. Like I'm Father Christmas or their guardian angel or something. And just now the cabin suddenly filled with light, came flooding in like water, sunlight. The thing is, if there's all this sunlight coming in which wasn't coming in before, that means that until now the sun was behind something and can only be the Earth, can't it? The Earth, I still can't see it, but now I know it's there. I closed the filter on the observation window. I didn't want the kids to wake up yet. There's a hatch in the floor, just in front of multifunction displays, the hatch that leads to the dandelion module. I thought I'd go down there and look through the dandelion's window. I might even be able to see the Earth from there. I fiddled with the catch. It was simple enough. It was only when it was actually moving I suddenly thought, what if it doesn't lead to the dandelion? What if it goes straight to the outside, to the waste of space? If it does, we'll be sucked out by pressure differential and our heads will explode. Luckily, that didn't happen. Inside the dandelion, it was surprising and rockety. 3 rows of seats, 2 massive windows. It really was like being inside an unusually spacious ice cream van. The good news was there was lots of cupboards full of food and drinks. The bad news was that even with those massive windows, you still couldn't see Earth. There was a massive thing between us and the sun, but it wasn't the Earth. Something moved behind me. Florida, she had come down into the ice cream van. Then, "Oh my God," she said, pointing out of the window. "Do you know what that is?" I nodded and said, "I think I may have seen it before." "That," said Florida, "is moon, you idiot." An unscheduled diversion. When you look at the moon from Earth, it looks a bit smudgy. I mean, you know the smudges of mountains and so on, but really, they just look like blotches. But from where I'm sitting, you can see they're mad, spiky storybook mountains. The surface is white as paper and the shadows are sharp and definite. It's like looking at the map of an imaginary realm in a Warcraft manual. Massive mountains, deep valleys, empty plains. All it needs is a few trolls and dragons and a big fancy compass. "What?" yelled Florida. "What is the moon doing there?" I said calmly. "Oh, you know, orbiting the Earth, affecting the tides, stuff like that. It's important for a parent to stay calm in all eventualities." Inside my head, my panicky 12-year-old voice was screaming, "It's pulling us nearer and nearer. It's pulling us into orbit. That's what it's doing. We're going to be left circling the moon forever. What are you going to do?" The truth is, I had been hoping that when I got into the dandelion, there'd be some brakes and a steering wheel and I'd be able to stop us, change direction, maybe do an intergalactic 3-point turn and drive us home. But there didn't seem to be any controls at all. Florida shrugged and said, "I suppose we'll just have to take a free return trajectory around the moon to bring us back." I said, "Sorry?" She said, "You know, like on Apollo 13. Calmed out her voice out loud. "Yeah, exactly. That's exactly my plan. What you just said." Scared little boy voice inside. "What did she say? Is she saying there's a way out of this?" Florida plonked herself down on the bench seats and growled, I hate it when this happens. When you think you're nearly home and then the bus goes off on some, what's it called, trajectory? No, you know when you catch the 81, it comes right up to the flyover and you think, I'm nearly home, and then it goes off under the flyover, round the island, all the way back up to 24-hour Tesco before it comes back to where it was when you were nearly home. Oh yeah. She crossed her arms and stared out the window. She really did look like she was sitting on the number 81. I sat down next to her and said, yeah, trajectories. Don't you hate them? How do they work exactly? Then she told me the whole story of Apollo 13, which is this. Apollo 13 was on its way to the moon when one of its oxygen tanks blew up. The crew climbed into the little tiny landing module and used it as a kind of life raft. When they flew right around the back of the moon so the moon's gravity would give them a hint of extra speed. By burning their remaining engine at the right time, broke their orbit and made it home to Earth. Obviously that's a summary. In Florida's version there was a lot about whether 13 really is an unlucky number and which Hollywood actor played the astronauts in the film. Kevin Bacon and Tom Hanks, by the way, and who those actors are married to now. While she was talking, the others must have noticed the open hatch in the floor of the command module. One by one they floated down into the Dandelion. The first one in was Hassan, who didn't seem to notice me at all. He spread himself out on one of the bench seats, saying, it's much more comfortable down here. Samson, too, stared out the window with his mouth open until Florida said sarcastically, yes, it's the moon. We've got to go right round the back of it. Can you believe it? The moon? But no one said anything about the moon. It's a diversion, said Florida, as unscheduled diversion. But the moon, it's so far away. Not anymore, said Florida. The real problem was Max. It wasn't the moon that bothered him, it was the Dandelion. Our mission was to decouple the module, to put it in orbit. We must do it now. I explained that we couldn't do it right this minute because we had a problem. Not to release it means we failed. Failure is not an option. We haven't failed, we just haven't succeeded yet. We'll press the green button when we can. But Dr. Drax said, Dr. Drax didn't know. She knows more than you do. I am now going to press the green button, he said. I ran after him. Weightless running isn't exactly speedy. It felt like one of those dreams where you're trying to get away from mad dogs but your feet are sort of stuck to the floor. In the end, I sort of toppled forward into an involuntary somersault, just caught him with my foot and sent him spinning back towards a seat. I grabbed the hatch myself and said, listen, we've got a plan and it's a plan about... What was it about? Florida's going to tell you what it is about. Delegation, see, very important in teenagers. I haven't got any plan, said Florida. Delegation and affirmation. You've got a brilliant plan, Florida, about trajectories, remember? Oh, the free return trajectory, said Florida. Like on Apollo 13, you must remember Apollo 13. The brilliant failure, said Samsung too. The lunar mission that was supposedly abandoned because of a faulty oxygen tank. I didn't notice him saying supposedly at the time, but I certainly noticed it 10 minutes later. She explained the whole thing to him about going round the back of the moon until we were facing the right way, and she pointed out that it was going to be easy for us. It was going to be a ride, in fact. On Apollo 13, all they had was this tiny module, and it was really cramped, and there wasn't enough oxygen or power. We've got this whole solar-powered Dandelion, got plenty of room and loads of food, so it's a picnic, really, by comparison. The Dandelion is meant for space travel, but not re-entry. The command module is meant for re-entry, but not really for space travel. So we use the Dandelion to get us back to Earth orbit. Then we all go back into the command module and use that to get back to Earth. Understand? Everyone said yes. What was there not to understand? But Max said, yes, I understand. And now I'm going to press the green button. What? Have you been listening to anything we've been saying? Yes, but I listened to Dr. Drax more. Anyway, you can't press the button, said Hassan, because it's my turn. And the two of them hurled themselves towards the hatch. I shouted, no one is pressing the green button. We'll all be killed. Samson too said, of course we won't be killed. You don't believe we're really in space, surely? Everyone stopped and stared at him. Of course we are really in space. This is a trick Dr. Drax has played on us. If we open the door, we'll find that we are in the middle of Infinity Park, same as always. In fact, I'm going to open it now. He kicked his feet on the back of the seat and floated off towards the airlock. I was going to go after him when I realised I had to go after Max too. My brain tried to choose between being shot out of a spaceship and accelerating to death, or being set adrift forever and ever in a space ice cream van. In that horrible moment, I realised that the real danger wasn't the infinite vacuum of space or the 6 million possible flaws in the rocket. The real danger was the children. Remember, a teenager is barely in control of anything, not even his or her own body. You are in control of everything. If your teens are reacting irrationally or disproportionately to some little thing, it's up to you to try and work out what's really upsetting them. From talk to your teen. Max was upset because he's very fixated on success. To him, being halfway to the moon in an ice cream van meant we were failures. He thought that if we jettisoned to the dandelion, we'd be winners again. As for Samson too, he was upset because he'd totally flipped out, which is understandable. If I didn't have to look after the others, I'd flip out too. All I had to do was to sort Max out. Was to show him that getting ourselves home in one piece after all the problems we'd had would be an even greater achievement than just doing what Dr. Drax had told to do. So I said to him, "You know, Max, after all our problems, getting home in one piece will be an even greater achievement than just doing everything that Dr. Drax said." He said, "All our problems are Hassan's fault." "No," said Hassan, "they're all your fault. You pressed the wrong button, now I'm going to press the right one." "I didn't press any button. You did." "No, I didn't press any button. You did." I said, "I'm the daddy and I decide who presses a button, and I have decided that whoever wins my game presses it when I say so." "Wins?" said Max, suddenly interested. Like I said, every monster has its soft zone. Winning is Max's. "What game?" Yes, what game?" Turns out that Hassan had a board game in his pit. "This game," he said, "taught me to love money, and that's why I love it. The game was Monopoly. There really is no getting away from it. I suppose that's why it's called Monopoly. Low gravity Monopoly is better than Monopoly you play around the kitchen table in that it lasts only a few minutes. If you've got a magnetic travel set like Hassan's, the pieces will stay on the board, and if you carefully keep hold of the money, that's okay too. The problem is the dice. You can throw the dice, but they won't actually land. They just drift off in a random direction, dipping and swooping like genetically modelled sugar cubes, and they never stop spinning. The endless spinning really interests Samson too. "Fascinating," he said. "There must be some way to harness the energies these dice create by spinning like this." And just in case I was starting to feel a bit relaxed, he added, "I wonder how Dr. Drax has achieved this effect. It really does feel as though we are weightless. You could almost believe you really were in space." We did try throwing the dice onto a loop of sellotape that we stuck to one of the seats, but it didn't work, and during the arguments about whether it was a 6 or not, I spotted Max heading back to the command module. I shouted, "What about rock, paper, scissors?" None of them except Florida had even ever played that. They were completely interested in it for about 20 minutes. The first 10 minutes were taken up discussing why paper beats rock and whether anyone would ever really try to use scissors to cut a rock. I had a round with Max in which he played dynamite and I played scissors. Then the next round, he played rock and I played scissors again. "Scissors wins," he said. "You played scissors last time and I destroyed them with my dynamite. How can you still have scissors when I destroyed your scissors?" "Well, they're not destroyed forever, just until the next round." This game was obviously too abstract for Max. He went very red and started yelling, "This is madness. One of them must be destroyed, or how can there be a winner? You can only have a winner if something is destroyed." When he shouted "destroyed" like that, I nearly panicked, but I didn't. I just said, "Hide and seek, anyone?" Weightless hide and seek sounds like a good idea, but it was a bigger mistake than rock, paper, scissors. Weightless hide and seek was that what nearly killed us off. I was on. I counted very loudly to 40 while they all went and hid. For that 40 seconds I sat back on one of the window seats and looked out at the moon. And I shouted, "Coming, ready or not." I could actually hear Samson too, moving about under one of the chairs. It would have been a great hiding place except for the weightlessness, which kept making him float up and bang his head, so I caught him and we both went looking for the others. I could feel that Max was watching me. I looked up and glimpsed him holding on to the ceiling with his fingers, looking down at us, hoping that we hadn't seen him. I decided to let him stay there so that he could win, since winning was such a big deal to him. I moved to the front of the dandelion, between the front seat and the window, which is where I used to sit on the top deck of the bus to school. I noticed there was a bigger than you really needed space between the two front seats and a kind of groove in one of the floor panels. I gave it a tug and it rolled sideways. Florida was looking straight at me and this big grin on her face saying, "Come and see." I swung myself down there and Samson too followed. Florida had found the driving cab of the dandelion. Everything was there, a driver's seat with a proper steering wheel, even wing mirrors, so that you could see the solar cells properly. The view was a bit rubbish because the command module was still stuck on the front of it, but that only made me feel That only made it feel more like an ordinary car. A car stuck behind a big lorry or something. A car that I could drive. I looked at Florida and she nodded at me. She'd read my mind. "Except you're a rubbish driver," said Florida. "Yeah, but it'll be easy up here. There's hardly any traffic." "This is so disappointing," said Samson too. "It doesn't feel a bit like a spaceship. It's just made from old bits of a bus." I couldn't help but sit down and try the seat. Florida said, "Be careful, really need a manual. You never know one of those things," she waved a hand at the control panel. "Might be the ejector button or something." I looked up. There, just above the driver's seat, was one of those sunshades that you pull down like in a car. Dad keeps his manual, his A to Z, and his insurance on the back of his, fastened with an elastic band. I pulled it down, a sightseer's map of the moon, some insurance documents, and a manual. With a troubleshooting section, a getting started page, a diagram of the instrument panel, and it was the diagram of the instrument panel that put the fear in me. The little drawings of the buttons seemed to jump off the page and shoot towards me like Death Guild spears. "Buttons? The button?" Max and Hassan were out of my sight. They could be dishing out 9 different kinds of doom right this second. I pushed myself into the air and shot up through the hatch like Superman, banged my head on the ceiling of the minibus, somersaulted towards the command module, wriggled through the airlock, and there was Max standing right next to the green button, about to press it. I have no idea how I got from the bottom of the module to the top so quickly, but I was between him and the button, faster than I could think about it, and 2 of us were wrestling through the air, knocking to pipes and sleeping bags and handles and dials. Florida got herself right next to the button and shouted, "So Hassan wins, isn't that right, Dad?" This caught Max's attention. "Hassan wins?" I said, "Well, I can't see him, can you? Doesn't that make him the last to be found?" "That means he's the winner." You could hear a little rumble of dissatisfaction brewing somewhere inside Max. I was half expecting him to put his head back and howl like a wolf. Then I said, "Of course, if you find him, then you're the winner." And he was off. I told Florida to stay and guard the green button while I went off with Max and Samsung 2 to find Hassan. And here's the thing, we couldn't find him. The command module, no sign. The dandelion, no sign. The cockpit, no sign. Hassan had gone missing. In space. The worst thing you can do with a teen is get sucked into an argument on their terms. They have more time than you do. They can keep going forever from talk to your teen. Hassan is not on the rocket. Therefore, logic says he got off the rocket. Samson 2, you're always telling us what logic says. Who is logic? Your imaginary friend? Why don't you say something yourself instead of letting logic do all the talking? He left the rocket. Well, logic says you can't leave a rocket because it's in space. Logic says if someone leaves a rocket, which Hassan has, then the rocket isn't in space, it's a stimulation. We searched the rocket again. We didn't find him. Florida said, there was this television programme once where everyone thought they were in space and it turned out they were in Essex or something. I know. And then, said Samson too, what about the Apollo space programme, where they managed to convince everyone they'd been to the moon? Max said, they never went to the moon. Are you sure? Florida said, of course they went to the moon. Mr. Bean went to the moon. We talked to him about it. Well, I hate to call anyone a liar, said Samsung too. But if they went to the moon, why did they never go back? Oh, people always say they're going back, and they never do, I said. My parents went to Spain on holiday once. They said they were going to go back every year, but they never did. Samson too was not going to let go of this. Have you seen the picture of the American flag on the moon? The flag is flying, isn't it? Yes. Well, there's no wind on the moon, so how would the flag be flying? It's an obvious fake. I said maybe, just maybe, the people who went all the way to the moon knew there was no wind up there, so maybe, just maybe, they put a little bit of wire at the top of the flag to make it stick out. After all, they did build a whole load of rockets with 6 million moving parts each, so maybe, just maybe, they actually thought of putting wires in a flag. Samson too didn't even blink. Logic, he said. Says just open the door and see. Okay, Logic. Why not do that? Go on, Logic. I will. I didn't say you. I said Logic. Logic says I'll do it. No, Logic says I'll do it. I'm in charge. I'm the one responsible. I'll go outside. Why did I say that? Going outside a rocket in space is called EVA. Going outside a rocket in space is called EVA, Extravehicular activity. Unfortunately, I'd missed the part of the training where we did that because of Eddie Xandu's electric Ribena. The others remembered the important things: how to put the helmet on, how to connect your oxygen, how to check the EVA suit. There was a section in the manual about how to open the airlock, and suddenly there I was, ready to go into space. I was standing inside the airlock, and Florida was pointing to a coiled yellow rope. "That's the safety harness," she said. "It ties you to the rocket, so you don't just drift off. Put it on straight away. You're dead without that." I fastened myself into the safety harness. Florida sealed the inside door behind me, and for a minute I was bobbing for myself inside the airlock. It was like standing in a lift. It seemed so ordinary, apart from the fact that I was levitating, that I started to think that maybe Samsung 2 was right. Maybe we weren't in space. Maybe we were in some kind of simulation. The external door started to open. There was just a slant of black at first, black so solid that it looked like a wall. It was so hard to believe that things could move around in it. And I started to see the underside of one of the Dandelion's silver sails. I'm saying now that's what it was, but it was so hard to tell. It was so dazzling that you couldn't really make out the shape. Blazed like the filament of a really strong light bulb. Then the door opened wider, and I was out there in the black nothingness, floating free. Suddenly I collided with one of the sails and rolled around under it until I hit one of the struts, and something made me grab hold of it. I hung there like a kind of mad Christmas decoration, and for a second or two it was completely the most cosmic thing ever. The huge moon was in front of me, and my feet seemed to be dangling in a kind of milky bath of stars. In a moment I was going to turn myself round and see if I could see the earth. Meanwhile I was enjoying how intense it all was. The space between the stars was blacker than anything I'd ever seen, but everything was shining. The sail, the moon, the stars, my metal cuffs were shining 1,000,000 times brighter than you'd ever seen anything shine. Even my yellow safety cord seemed to shine. I remember hanging there, watching it slither through my legs and snake off into space. I remember thinking, hey, I've got a safety cord, I can let go. And at the same moment thinking, if one end of it is fastened to me, what's the other end fastened to? Nothing. It was just drifting off into space. I'd fastened myself to the cord, but I'd not fastened the cord to the module. What I can remember after that is my own hands gripping the struts, trying to hold on, my own hands shuffling painfully slowly along the sail towards the module. I thought about going hand over hand like on monkey bars, but I was too terrified to let go of one hand, even for a second. It seemed to take hours to get back to the other side of the rocket. I was sweating and my heart was thumping. By the time I was next to the rocket, my helmet was starting to steam up. That's when I realised I wasn't really sure which way it was back to the hatch. I'd rolled over so many times under the sail, I couldn't remember now whether I came out of the back or the front. I worked out that if the yellow cord was streaming past me, then it must be pointing in the opposite direction, to the one I had come from. Also, I knew I couldn't see the moon from the hatch. The hatch must be at the end, furthest from the moon. Underneath the sail, there was a strut attaching it to the module. I edged down that and found the sill of the compartment the sails had been in before they popped out. I gripped that and followed it towards the back. It took ages. By the time I got to the end, I was so tired to do anything except hang there, staring straight at a couple of rivets and a big metal panel. I knew the hatch must be nearby, but I couldn't see much by then because of the condensation in my helmet. I was also starting to worry about how much oxygen I had left. I ran my hand over the panel until I came to the edge of it. There was a double row of rivets there, just wide enough to squeeze my fingers between that. That should hold me for a second. I brought my other hand over and squeezed that in too, and I reached out to find the next panel. Did the same. I was just clinging on by my fingertips the whole time. I was crawling along the outside of something that was moving faster than a train. I tried to find the hatch with my fingers, but suddenly my foot caught on something. It was stuck. I brought the other foot round to it. Yes, 2 feet fitted inside. I ran 1 foot along the inside rim of whatever it was. Then I froze. The rim seemed quite sharp and metal. What if I ripped the suit? I stayed still for a while, trying not to breathe. I was sure now that it was a hatch before me. I just wasn't sure how to get the rest of myself down there. I tried crawling down with my hands, but keeping my feet tucked in. It only took me so far. I was going to have to try to jump down. But what if the moment I let go, I just shot off into space? I had no choice. I had to risk it. I let go of the side of the rocket, and at the same time tried to push my leg inside as hard as I could. In my mind, this would make me slide elegantly, feet first, back inside the hatch. In fact, I banged my knees. The pain made me curl up into a little ball, so for a second or two I was floating completely free in space, but the momentum of curling up made me turn right over, and as I came round I was passing the bottom of the hatch. I grabbed it and dragged myself inside. There was plenty to hold on to in there. I felt around, blinding my fingers, and pressed a button. I could hear the airlock door closing behind me. I still wasn't out of danger, but I was so happy to be back inside. I started to take my helmet off. I wasn't sure how to do it. I fumbled around a bit. When I finally got it off, I could see again. And the first thing I saw was the hatch door just clicking shut. If I'd known the proper way of undoing the helmet, if I'd got it off more quickly, the door would not have been fully closed and my head might have exploded, although I'd probably have suffocated first. I stood with my forehead against the metal door. It felt so cool and so solid. I loved the way it didn't try to run away from me and leave me in space. It seemed like hours before the door opened, long, happy hours of just standing still, not gripping anything, not scared, appreciating the various properties of metal doorways. As soon as the hatch opened, all the children were floating there in front of me, bobbing up and down like a bunch of cherubs, and they just looked at me, and they just looked so alive. I know it sounds mad, but I could see every one of their eyelashes. I wanted to count them. I could hear their breathing. I could hear eyelids opening and closing. Everything. It was like I'd completed a quest and all the rewards I'd earned, the health, the experience, the strength were flooding into me. It was like I'd gained a superpower. Super hearing. I could have just stood there and listened to them breathing and blinking all day. I wanted to hug them, to be honest, but obviously that would have been too weird. Florida said, "Did you find him?" "Who?" "Hassan. You went outside to look for Hassan." "No, he's not out there." I was so happy that I'd rescued myself. I'd forgotten about rescuing Hassan. "What is out there?" "Well, you know, the universe and stuff." "If he's not out there and he's not in here, where is he?" said Florida. "He can't just have vanished." Max said, "First the Earth vanished, and now Hassan has vanished. Everything is vanishing. Maybe we're going to vanish." I said, "Shh." Among all the new sounds, I could hear eyelids opening and closing, muscles and bones moving, electronic equipment buzzing, and a counter from the Travel Monopoly set hovering under the seats. I had noticed another sound, louder and rougher, coming from the inside of the wall, near the driving equipment. I floated over to it. To me it sounded deafening, but I knew that the others couldn't hear it at all. Because when I was looking for Hassan earlier, I hadn't heard it either. It was my new super hearing that picked it up. I felt around on the wall for a bit and found a little gap between the panels. I pushed on one panel and tugged on the other, and there was Hassan, snoring. He woke up looking so pleased with himself. He said, "Did I win?" When the soldiers came to my village, I hid in a space behind the water tank for 3 days. I've had plenty of practice at hide and seek. I said, "Of course, I forgot about that." It was strange to think that this might be the only second most dangerous game of hide and seek Hassan ever played. "So I won." "Yes, you won. You did really well." "So," said Max, "he won. Finally, I'm a loser." I looked at him. With my super hearing, I could almost hear his heart beating faster than usual. Then it seemed to calm. "You know," he said, "it does not feel so bad." Florida shoved him, and he floated backwards, all the way to the other side of the minibus. He laughed all the way. Watching him made me feel good. I knew then that the green button was finally safe from him. I said, "Let's measure you all on the height chart. See if you've grown." Florida looked at me. I'd gone mad. "You were only gone 10 minutes. How would we have grown? Space, isn't it? Like Samsung 2 said. Less gravity on your spine." They all lined up and I marked off their new height next to the door, just like Mum used to do with me at home. Samson 2 said, "The power of suggestion is amazing. We've all grown an inch or so, just like we would have done if we were really in space." "We are really in space," said Max. "Mr. Digby went outside, remember?" "Yes," said Samson 2. He went outside, read a newspaper, then came back inside. I was tempted to say, "Okay then, if you don't believe me, you go out there." But I took a deep breath and said, "Okay, but you know, say it's only a simulation. We'll still need to know the proper altitude and the proper angle of departure to get the speed we need from our return trajectory. Can you work stuff like that out?" "Maybe." He rummaged in his pit and pulled out a book, a really old thick book called a Boy's Wonder Treasury of Science. "My mother gave it to me for my birthday one time," he said, "when I was small." "It was her one time," he said, "when I was small. It was her favourite book when she was small. Her mother had given it to her. It's old. I was ill for a while and had to stay off school. I sat in bed and read this book and it made me clever. I could feel it. It was like magic power. It was a pity really, because I got so clever they sent me away to a special school and I did not see her so much after that. Still, sometimes when I'm tired or when I do something not so clever, I sleep with it under my pillow and I can feel it making me clever again. That's how I know about the power of suggestion. At the back of the book were the massive lists of numbers, logarithmic tables. That's what they used to do complicated maths before they invented calculators. With this, said Samson too, I can work out the trajectory. He said, well, if you need any help, I'm officially gifted and talented, and when we're ready and the time is right, we will. All of us press that green button together. They all cheered. Florida suddenly shouted, look! One of the windows we could see a huge shadow moving across the moon like a carpet being rolled out. What is it? I knew what it was right away. I recognised it. I said, that's the shadow of the Earth. And we all watched it. It was the nearest any of us had come to seeing the Earth since we blew off course. It was the first time since then that we'd known for sure that the Earth was still there, except for Samson too, obviously, who thought he was still in China. The shadow skied over the moon's surface, and I tried to imagine what bits of the Earth we were looking at. Then I said, who's hungry? And we raided the supplies of space food. While we were all laying into pork that makes you eat your own hand, Florida suddenly burst out laughing and pointed at Max. What? Said Max. Look, he's talking to us. He's eating and he's weeing at the same time. You can see his waste bag pulsing. Max, are you weeing while we're eating? Yes, I am. So am I, said Hassan. And soon everyone was, except me. I didn't think it was deadly. I just stood and tutted a bit. I think that made it even more enjoyable for them. Hassan laughed so much he floated right up to the ceiling. Then Max did the same. And Florida and finally even Samson too. They looked like some kind of giggly mobile circling hilariously all over the ceiling. It must have been just after that we slipped into the shadow and moved over the darkened surface of the moon.